run down the mountain. Today we are going to be looking at graphing linear equations here with Klaus Butlerhausen. Thank you for joining us on the mountain today.
Whoa, great skiing there, Klaus. As Klaus said, today we are on lesson 4 of our slope playlist. That is graphing linear equations using an ordered pair chart. So let's put our skis on and start getting down the mountain. So our objective today I will be able to use an ordered pair chart to graph a linear equation. This has kind of thrown us back to our ratio playlist, which makes sense because we know slope is the ratio between rise over run. And so we're going to be graphing using an ordered pair chart today, just like we did with ratios. A couple of vocabulary terms before we start. The first one is throwing us back to our linear equation playlist, which hopefully you've already done. If not, please check it out and like the videos. A linear equation is a type of equation that when graphed is forming a straight line, right? A constant is a whole number without a variable attached to it. For instance, in an equation, right, if you had a 3 and there was no variable attached to it, that would be a constant. And a coefficient is the number being multiplied by the variable. Really, it's just the number in front of the variable, but we know that when we're talking about 5y, we're talking about 5 groups of y, right? Throwing us back to repeated addition. So our coefficient for this term would be 5. So just some vocabulary that we're going to be using today in our video that you've already learned in our linear equation playlist, but still good to review before we get off the ski lift. We know that a linear equation when graphed is going to form a straight line, right? And we also know that a linear equation is an equation where none of the terms are raised to a power bigger than 0 or 1, right? So nothing's going to be squared or cubed or to the 4th or 5th power. And so to graph this equation, the long way of doing it is you need to make your ordered pair chart, right? So I can put my X here, okay? And I'm going to make this a little bit different. And I'm going to put my linear equation in the middle of it. And then I'm going to put my Y column over here. So this is kind of going to be, it is an ordered pair chart, but it's also going to be kind of like a input-output chart, okay? And so if X was Y, I'm sorry, if X was 0, that means in our equation we're going to substitute 0 for the variable X, which means we know that 0 plus Y, okay, would equal -1. And now we're simply going to solve for y. So for this one, it'd be really easy, right? Because if we don't have anything, we kind of cross that out. And we know when x equals 0, y is going to equal -1, right? So if we put another x in there, so this time let's say 2, for instance, right? And so now I'm going to plug in 2 for x, okay? And then I'm going to solve for y. So I know when I'm doing linear equations, I'm trying to, I have to keep the scale balanced, right? I have to keep the equation balanced. So whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. And I know if this is a positive 2, I want to subtract 2 to get rid of it, which means whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So when x was 2, y equaled -3, right? -1 minus 2 is -3. So if x was 2, y was -3. And we'll do 3 and then we'll graph and we'll keep going, okay? So now let's say I have x was 3, okay? So 3 plus y equaled -1. And again, same thing, I gotta solve for y, so -3 minus 3. That's gonna cancel out using my algebra skills, and y is going to equal -4. So when x was 3, y was -4. So now we're going to just take our ordered pairs that we solved using our equation and plug them in onto our graph and graph them. So when x was 0, y was -1. When x was 2, y was -3. When x was 3, y was -4. And you can see this forms a straight line. Now, I intentionally skipped x being 1 because I kind of want you to see, if you know it's forming a straight line, I know the slope of this line now is going down, right? It's descending from left to right. So it's going to be going down 1, going over 1, going down 1, going over 1. So my slope for this line is going to be -1, right? Because I'm going down and going over. Going down 1, going over. So that's going to be a -1 over 1, which is just going to be -1. So this is how you graph a linear equation using an ordered pair chart. You plug in the x to the equation, and then you solve for what the y would be if x was that specific number. Let's take a look at a we do problem, okay? And let's do this one again, right? And so now we're gonna, again, we're gonna do our ordered pair chart, but for this I'm gonna kind of do like an input-output chart. Some teachers teach you to do it separately. To me, I like to see that when I put in X, I'm getting out a Y, right? It's kind of up to what makes sense to you. And so here's my ordered pair chart that I'm going to make. And again, I'm just going to start with X being 0. You could start with X being anything, -1. For this, you could only go to -6 because that's really how far your coordinate plane goes. So when X is 0, we had -2Y equaled 8. Okay, so I know 0 has no value, but I need to get rid of this -2 by using my algebra equation knowledge. Okay, so I do the inverse operation, and y is going to equal -4. So when x was 0, y was -4. So we can go ahead and graph that. There we go. And so now I'm going to do another one. So when x is 1, right? What is y? So I need to first of all, I need to get all my variables on one side and my constants on one side, right? And so I want to kind of separate those. So I'm going to subtract 1 from this side, subtract 1 from this side. So I have -2y equals 7, right? And now I need to do the inverse operation of my multiplication, which is dividing by -2, dividing by -2, and I'm going to get y equals -7/2. Now, I'm going to turn this into a mixed number to make it easier to graph, and then you can even turn it into a decimal, right? But that would be -3½, which would be -3.5. So when x was 1, y was -3.5. Okay, so now let's graph that. So when I go over to 1, okay, now I'm going to go down 3½. So 1, 2, 3, and then that half is going to be right there. Now let's go backwards though. Okay, so let me extend this down so I have more room. Okay, so now instead of putting my x value in, let's put my y value in, right? So if y was 0, okay, then you could solve for x. So now I'm going to do x minus 2 groups of 0, because I'm plugging in 0 for y, equaled 8, okay? And now I know -2 minus 0 is 0, so I'm going to say x equals 8. So when y was 0, x was 8. And now we can graph that, right? So I'm going to shuffle over 8 to x, which I'm kind of ran out of room. Oops. But that's 7, so 8 would be about right there, right? And so now let's see, okay, when y is -1, right? And so you can kind of just graph 3 or 4 using this ordered pair. Let's do one more. So if y was -1, that means I'm going to be using x minus 2 groups of -1 equals 8, okay? And so I know that I know -2 times 1 is going to be +2 equals 8. And now I need to get rid of my 2 by doing my inverse operation. So those cancel out, and x is going to equal 6. So when y was -1, x equaled 6. So I'm going to shuffle over 6 and go down 1, okay? And you can see right here that I'm forming a straight line. So based on my slope right here, it looks like I'm going over 1 and up half, 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 right? Going over 1 and up half, going over 1 and up half, going over 1 right here and up half, and then one more, going over 1 and up half, right? And so I can see right here that my slope is going to be positive, right? And so I'm going up a half for every one that I'm going over. So that's how we do that's how we graph a linear equation using an ordered pair chart. Join us for our next lesson as we get into a very easy way to rewrite these linear equations that will make it easy to graph without having to do all of this math work. Thank you so much for checking us out on InstructaBeats today. We hope that you will subscribe and like the video. You can hear our slope song and our other instructional songs and videos at InstructaBeats Official on YouTube. And you can follow us on Instagram at InstructaBeats. Thank you so much for your time. InstructaBeats out.